Hello and welcome everyone back to another grand, spectacular, super fresh, super awesome episode of OnReviewCast. Today we're taking a look at the interview with a vampire. Today we're going to look at the interview with a vampire, season 1, episode 5.
AMC series, Interview with a Vampire, season 1, episode 5.
And today's episode is entitled A Vile Hunger for Your Hammering Heart. It's written by Hannah Moskovich and directed by Levin Akin. Air date was October 30th, 2022. Episode synopsis, courtesy of fandom. Colors, activities, and courtesies present continued challenges for Louis and Lestat. Her actions light an explosive fuse that erupts at episode 10. And what an eruption that was. This episode, man, I will tell you, wow. Just wowie, wow. I think this is a good one. This is a good one. We'll definitely get to the score and all that other stuff later on down the line in the episode, but this is a good one. And the funny thing is, it starts off kind of light-paced, right? Kind of slow. But I guess you could tell throughout the episode that tensions were rising, and just like we saw the tensions rose and came to an inevitable, climactic ending. So I guess that was the pacing of the episode. And I guess also I want to say that this episode definitely clarified, and it made some things very factual in terms of the rules for vampirism that actually contrast with some other shows, and we'll get into that also a little bit later on. But the first thing we see in these first couple of scenes, it's what opens up is Daniel is. We switch back perspective. I know last episode we were at the perspective of Claudia, and that was a hootenanny, if I just say so myself, hootenanny. But this time we take a look at we're back to the perspective of Louis, and Louis is taking in he's back in the driver's seat, and we're back at the table with the two contrasting pictures that we talked about from, I think, was episode 2 of the human versus the vampire, and basically they're back at that table sitting on opposite sides. And surprisingly, Reid is being fed off of, surprisingly, not surprisingly, because I guess Reid he's the one who said it himself, like he thinks Louis as some kind of god or something. But Reid, we open up with that scene with Reid being fed on by Louis, and he is basically recanting still the story of Claudia and still dealing with the situation that essentially is Claudia. And it's like I said, it's slow, very slow pacing. It's very slow going at first, and it seems like Daniel has become, well, I mean, he wasn't like I guess in contrast with the other episode before, when he ironically was feeding on that human in episode 2, and he was kind of like I think he was a little disturbed by it. I can't quite remember. We'll have to go back and watch the episode and tell me if I'm wrong. But he was slightly disturbed about like I think like Louis feeding off of the animals and stuff, and not so disturbed, I think, by the humans. And he seems more comfortable, it looks like, and more confident around Louis, and Louis basically just acting like a vampire and feeding off of the guy. So yeah. And in his opening scenes, like I said, like Louis is still dealing with the fact that Claudia is not being so receptive to interacting with them anymore. And this episode is truly the breaking up, I think, of the band. the breaking up of the band, the dissolvements, and the fight for, I want to say, Louis' love. Honestly, I think that's what it comes down to. This is the fight for Louis' love, and honestly, I don't know. So just quick sidetrack. When people fight for love, or when people fight over a person, even if it's coming from the right places, I think that in the end, if you're fighting, and you might have good intentions, nobody really wins at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Nobody's gonna win at the end of the day. Not really. If you keep, especially, I guess, if you're going about it in an unhealthy and on a wrong way, much like how they kind of were in this episode, like nobody really wins. Anyway, getting back to the episode, I mean, like Claudia is kind of just being a teen and ignoring her parents, and it's like she's wants to live her own life. And to the fact of where Lestat essentially gets fed up and he bursts into her room and lifts up the coffin and takes out her diary and begins to read it. And I guess they share this information, and Louis kind of reads it too, which is kind of fucked up because, like, I mean, like, I don't know, like, I'm not a parent. I get that you want to protect your kids and you want to make sure that they're safe and whatever it is, but I've never really agreed with that level of invasion of privacy. It should at least house to some degree some things that are sacred to them as a person, despite them being a child. But as a person, you should have some kind of level of discreetness, some kind of level of, this is my world and I'll be able to be free and express myself in the degrees however I feel. But no, they go ahead and just read the diary. But it's a good thing, I guess, that they did, because they found out about the bodies that she had been quote unquote taken care of, and they weren't really being taken care of. They were being handled very poorly. They were being put away very poorly, honestly, to where the point where they found her is just like the point where the authorities found the bodies, is what I was trying to say. And just she's a they really painted, they did a good job, and the production company and all this, the people at AMC that put this together, they did a really good job at portraying the fact that, like I could see this, we could see this all being a very domestic situation. It's like a kid messes up, or a kid doesn't follow the rules, or something like that, and their parents are mad. They made it look very well, being domesticated and in that kind of way. It's very, very interesting to see the actors play off of each other that way, and making that scene kind of come to life. Something I want to point out that I don't know if you guys caught, but I definitely did, was when I'm wondering if, like, again, I kind of want to go back and I want to watch these movies or the materials that essentially, I think it is, at a certain point, the franchise that is Interview with a Vampire, because she does something while they're fighting about these bodies and the people that she's been killing that was kind of a weird shot, but also kind of like hinted towards, like, maybe that's like a vampiric power that's what she's supposed to have. So she's yelling, she's fighting with Lestat, and she's fighting with Louis about getting out of her room. And Lestat and Louis are just questioning her, like, where she buried the bodies, and basically, what do you think is gonna happen, like, when the storm rolls up and, like, the body's gonna be washed up on shore, or when there's low tide, the bodies are gonna be found by someone, like a bunch of them, in fact. But which they do. And when she yells something fierce, the glass cracks. And I've seen different interpretations, like I said, of vampires and vampire powers. And I feel, I don't know, that kind of triggered something in me. And I think that even if they don't do it, or they haven't said it, that happens in the books, or that happens in some kind of series that she's in. I have a feeling that like that's gonna be like a special ability that she has, that high-pitched like banshee scream. Like I think that that's gonna be a thing. Just because how they shot it and how they shot it, it was like, get out of my room, and then like when she screamed, they just like did the hyper zoom on, well, the glass cracked, and then they did the hyper zoom on her. That was kind of like, I was like, oh, huh. She has like super high pitched banshee screaming powers, I guess. But the thing is, like, I've never, well, I mean, it's not a stretch for like maybe a vampire to have those powers, but I've never seen, I don't know, maybe I have. I'm not too sure. Like, I feel like she should be able to do that, or like a vampire has done that in the past, like Dracula's Bride or something like that. Like, I don't know. It just feels very, it feels very, I guess, correct for the character. If she was to have those abilities, and in this world that vampires have certain unique abilities maybe towards them or catered towards them based on their genetics or based off their family line or something like that, like, or their sire line. That would be very, very interesting, I think. A very interesting concept. Again, like, let me know in the comments, I guess, like, without trying to maybe ruining too much, if the Anne Rice's universe is that what it's about? It's like certain bloodlines have certain abilities or whatever, or what have you. Or is it that they have their abilities are linked to their unique, like, are their abilities triggered or linked to the unique genetics? Because that's a very interesting take, honestly. It's in this, the vampire story is very interesting as well, because I've never seen vampirism kind of done like this as well. I want to switch my attention back to the scene in the bar with the guy that's running for some kind of political position. And he starts telling Louis and Lestat about the bodies that the authorities essentially found. That one of the women that were actually found too, like one of her left breasts were like, or her right or left, whatever it is, one of her breasts were essentially cut off. And each of these bodies were mutilated in kind of like that degree. And that kind of, they're understanding that this is Claudia. But that kind of triggered them to go into like protective parent mode. And the thing that kind of was weird, like I said, talking about unique vampire powers, both of them, Louis and Lestat, marked two people. Lestat looks at Louis and he's like one each. And kind of similar to the first episode, it's like kind of like they stopped time and they essentially stopped time. But I was saying that because they had the white eyes, right? If we look at the first episode, those white eyes, when people are caught in a trance and everything kind of slows down and they are being basically hypnotized. So that happens to him, and he marks an X like on the upper right side of like near his eye on his cheek, right on his on his more like his eye socket bone, not the bone itself, but the skin, and he marks an X. And I guess maybe they didn't really go into detail about that, but what I'm guessing is that X is some kind of mark that says that, hey, like he's maybe a vampire pawn or something like that. Like I think it was I don't remember what show it was that they had, but it was a show they called Someone Familiars. And essentially they're humans that work on behalf of vampires. And that is something, I guess, maybe an ability that they will actually explore within the Anne Rice's universe. So I thought that was actually another vampire trick that was ability, whatever you want to call it. That was actually really, really cool. Okay. Drunk Claudia. Drunk Claudia was hilarious. Oh man, that was so funny. The reason that she was drunk, guys, by the way, I don't know if you guys caught this, but I did. The blood that she was drinking off of one of her victims was so soaked in alcohol. He was so alcohol induced that his blood had a bunch of alcohol in it, and she absorbed it when she drank off of him. So it's this entire sequence when the police are investigating their home and going through their going through their belongings and trying to find some evidence of basically bad behavior. Claudia's like running around trying to like clean up and make sure that there's no evidence in terms of like, I think there's like a toe or a fingernail or a slab of someone's like chest just out there because she's been killing people and drinking their blood. And she's trying to hide this essentially from the police. And one of the scenes where police officers like go on and break into her room because Claudia's gone off the bed and Louis sent her to bed, and Claudia just raises the blanket and she's like, "Oh, I'm getting ready, I'm getting dressed." Like that was I thought that was very clever. Like that was a very like a little girl would definitely, again, like domesticated thing that like would actually happen within a household. And yeah, like it's a very, very interesting scene. I'll definitely say that. A very very interesting scene. But that scene, although very lighthearted and funny, kind of leads into the next one that talks about some very serious psychological issues that we kind of hinted towards and kind of sprinkled a little bit over from the previous episode. And again, another domestic situation where you can see the two parents talking to their daughter, the two parents talking to two guardians talking to their child about like the child's, bad behavior. And one of the lines that essentially shows you that the kind of person that Lestat is. One of the lines that kind of shows the kind of person that Lestat is the line that where he says, I think he says something like, "You wanted her, you fix her." Oh, let's say, that was just so. I think that's what it was. You wanted her, you fix her. I think, and usually, and it's so. Again, the way they write it, it's so relatable as this to the real world. You could see this actually happening in a family household where, yes, the kid's in trouble, but realistically, the parents are like basically taking it out on themselves. And it's very, like I said, a very domesticated scene because, like, realistically, I mean, Claudia wasn't made by herself. She was made, and that's the old line, right? Claudia wasn't made by herself. It takes two. And essentially, it really takes, well, not in this case because they're both guys, but still, realistically, that's what happened. It takes two to tango. It's very relationship referenced because it takes two to be, to raise a child and to raise a child properly. And to actually make a child in a normal heterosexual relationship, biologically it takes two. And technically that night when she was made, it was two. But getting back to the actual substance of the scene and her being scolded in that way and asking him, and Louis asking her, like, "What's wrong with you? Why would you do this?" And Claudia's response is that of a teen essentially acting out. And she's like, "Well, like, you guys made me, like, why did you make me?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, and again, these questions of vampire children, not being made is a lot of problems with that, and she starts to reveal, literally starts to talk about some of those problems, like what's wrong with that. And she says something like, she says something to the stat that's like, you as wicked as the devil have two lovers while I get to have none. And she's like, who's gonna love me? You know what I mean? Who's gonna want me? Little boys. And I'm gonna remember when she says little boys, like her mind is growing. Her body's not. Her body's not, but her mind is growing. She's evolving. She's getting older mentally, but physically, she's not getting any older. And what that means is she has to deal with the fact that there probably isn't gonna be enough, the loneliness of that. And within all of these characters, within vampirism as a whole, there's the story of loneliness there. There's a story of loneliness. Louis has it. We haven't really know about Lestat, because Lestat is kind of, if you think about it, Lestat is kind of somewhat an enigma. Louis had it definitely. When he lost and he chose to become a vampire, when he lost his brother and he felt lost in the world. And Claudia had it when she was orphaned and abandoned to live with her aunt, her mean old auntie. She says that in the previous episode. And how, and she was left in the fire to burn alone because her aunt died. And Louis was able to save her. But now she's entered into this new kind of loneliness. Besides the immortal life that all vampires have, she has to deal with the fact that loneliness on a sexual and a spiritual connection level, that all, even if you're a human vampire, that all beings kind of like need that passion of affection in your life. She's never gonna have that because there's an imbalance between her physical and her mental. And she questions like who's gonna love her? Little boys are always gonna love her, or perverts who's gonna want her? Perverts that watch her pee? Like, and she becomes, it's the disgusted fact that she started to think about it. And then she, to the point where she like lashes out, she's like, which one of you gonna fuck me? And it's like, Lestat makes that joke of us like, well, you're not my type. I like a more fuller figure. And he's like, she's being ridiculous. And she's like, Lestat. And Louis like, Lestat. She's being ridiculous. That's his response. I thought that was actually pretty funny. Like, considering that kind of broke the tension. But she brought up some very profound, legitimate questions, which leads up to the conversation or the reveal that she's been trying to make fires, and trying to make someone who's kind of similar towards her, who kind of maybe understands what she's going through, so she can have a partner like how Lestat has a partner. Only thing is, she's been failing at this. She's been failing to make the vampires that to make vampires like how Lestat can make. And this goes back to the fact that last episode I was wondering, like, well, not last episode, well, 2 episodes ago, when Claudia first came and Lestat had made her, and Lestat and Louis was asking Lestat to make her. And I asked the question, is like, well, why didn't Louis just do it? And I guess he didn't know. That was my conclusion. But I mean, even had he had done it, what it seems like now, at least from this perspective, what it seems like is that, like, even if he had done it, the likelihood of her surviving that bite, the likelihood of her surviving the transition was not likely, because I guess maybe there's a certain way to do it, or maybe that's a rule too within the Anne Rice's universe. I don't know. Again, guys, let me know in the socials is it a rule that only certain sired vampires can do it, or you can only do it when you become a certain age of vampire? Like, I don't know. I find it very odd that she had been trying because she'd been failing. Because realistically, in other genres, everybody has a different way of turning vampires. I talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in that they just bite people, and then when you get the bite, like, or you get bitten, that's it. You're a vampire, or you die, and then you become a vampire. That's essentially what it is. In the Vampire Diaries, you have to die. You have to have vampire blood in your system, and you have to die. They made that a very well-known and big thing. I'd say actually play that off of a lot of plot points in the Vampire Diaries, where if you die with vampire blood in your system, you're gonna become a vampire. That's how it works. And then in I think Twilight has some kind of venom shit. Again, fucking Twilight. I apologize, guys, for anybody who likes Twilight out there, and I apologize for even talking about it because I'm a fan. But hey, here we go. Get back on track. There's other ways to become. There are other rules to vampirism out there, but I guess in this, I don't know. And it seems like she was doing the right thing. Sometimes you have to feed them your blood right at the point of when they're dying. That's not look to be the case in this, but she's been failing at it. She isn't able to make more. Maybe she has to have someone teach her the right way. I don't know. Again, it's one of those weird things, that mysteries of this show. Yeah, at least to me as of right now. But yeah, so continuing on, Claudia has decided to leave home now. She's gone off to college. She's gone off to college now. She went to college. Yeah, that's that good old, she's like, time to grow up in a very, again, played from a very domestic kind of situation, domestic kind of feeling, relating it back to actual human experiences. That's essentially what happens to kids when they grow up. They go off to university, they go off to college, what have you, and then they come back home and they grow up. But she left them. I'd say she's she's kind of being a brat though at the same time, I guess, you know what I mean? What a petulant child, what a brat. To go off, to leave in the middle of, all the mess that you got. Create all this mess and just be like, yeah, all right, peace out. I'm out. Peace, I'm out. I'm going to college. That's but I guess that is such the burden, of parents. In a way, I suppose. Yeah. So, but with Claudia gone, Lestat says it himself. For the next 7 years, Claudia stays away, and they go into underground, and they aren't as prevalent within the community, and they aren't as, I suppose, rambunctious around the town, and they kind of keep to themselves, and and in that respect, they kind of let the house kind of go, and Lily is yearning for Claudia, and yearning for Claudia's love. And he visits the old place where the building was burned and where he first essentially meets her. And that he's just trying to find a way to feel connected to Claudia. He's trying to find a way to remember the times when he, when things were good, because he wants her back in her life, understandably so. And she's at college. She's at college, getting bullied by racist students and meeting new vampires on bikes. Now, this is interesting. This is something. This is groundbreaking, series breaking, kind of stuff here. Why, you ask? It's because this is the first time we meet another vampire other than original vampire, not introduced or not sired by Lestat. Lestat was the first one to just come on the scene and be like, all right, make 2 vampires. That's it. Like, that's just the story has been essentially centered around. But now we have some groundbreaking stuff, some groundbreaking, material here. That the fact that some groundbreaking material is the fact that we meet another vampire outside the realms of basically it's Lestat, and he has this motorcycle, and he essentially plays the knight in shining armor to Claudia for however long that essentially lasts while she's being bullied by this racist asshole. Anyway, Lestat and Louis are still having problems, but the main focus around this time, I think, is around these few scenes are essentially Lestat, or essentially Claudia and this new vampire that he found. I forget his name. I can't remember his name quite now, but it's something. It's a bit weird. Well, when he first meets her, the relationship between them seems very chill, and then it slowly begins to get darker, I suppose. It slowly begins to get darker. It slowly begins to become a bit more uncomfortable, and it goes into a very, very, very dark place. But before that happens, I kind of want to analyze a little bit, I think, what he had said, or what he was saying about, his origins and the way that he was me and his journey through vampirism. Kind of like the interview with a vampire within an interview with a vampire. Ooh, deception. But no. Yeah. He explained that he used to work for Mr. Ford of the car shops, Ford cars, we all know them around. I think that was a reference. But his maker, as he called him, was European. And apparently they aren't really quite in touch, but I guess he was made, and then he kind of realistically just kind of quit his job after that. Yeah, I think that was if anything, that was essentially like the gist of it. And like I said, slowly the relationship between Claudia and this man, this new vampire, gets to be a little bit more awkward, as he kind of tells her about how the fact that he's been hearing Louis actually call out to her. And you gotta remember, like, from our perspective, definitely from her perspective, she's probably thinking that Bruce is his name. Yeah, it's Bruce. She's probably thinking that, hey, like, this guy, there aren't many vampires out there. This guy is definitely, if he's a rare one, maybe he's, good like the other vampires that she's met. But she's only met the other good vampires, right? She doesn't know the potential dangers of the world because she's just like, fresh fish out of water. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't know she's kind of like us, actually, because from the perspective of us, because we only know the family that is Louis, Lestat, and Claudia. We don't know anything about any of the other vampires out there. Not necessarily. And I thought that was actually a pretty good take as well, because the way that they framed it is essentially that they might look, and they might like have or see with good intentions at first, but like realistically, they can potentially be very, even Lestat says it later on, is that they could become very vicious. And the relationship and the interaction between Bruce and Claudia becomes even more awkward and weird. And she kind of, you can see it in her face now, she has her defenses up a little bit after he hands her the book. And the book basically says etiquette on it. And it's kind of like, I guess, to me, I guess that was a communication towards her as to like, oh, she's not pleasant enough, or she's not being nice enough, I guess, towards her. And he's expecting a certain type of like treatment. Do you know what I mean? And it's very it's very implied. That's what I say. I was gonna say tongue in cheek, I guess, maybe, but it's very implied that what happens to her and the relationship towards her and him is that like it goes from like all right to be essentially sour, and where she feels very attacked, and she feels very unsafe around this new vampire. Yeah. And in her diary, we can see that it switches back after the scene of the campfire and him handing her the book. Switches back to the interview with Malloy, and Malloy is looking through the diary, and you can clearly see that there's some pages have been ripped out. And it's suspicious, and like how he even says, it puts Louis' validity of the storytelling into play, because clearly someone ripped him out, whether it's Claudia or him or Louis himself. He didn't really specify, he didn't really say who it was. But obviously this whole conversation and this entire thing, this arc of the Claudia story clearly bothered him, because through the entirety of it, he's carving a circle literally into the wood of the table at which they're sitting at, and it's bothering him so much that he's putting essentially an indentation into the wood. But something that you can tell that when Malloy starts to question him about the validity of it, and about asking him questions as to why these books are torn out, and essentially letting him know that realistically, like, information is information, and it's true. Like, once things are out there, the way people receive it and the people get it, it's completely up to them, and their interpretation of it is completely up to them, and how they're gonna run with it, completely up to them. And he was kind of referencing things like, okay, well, maybe she'll be Claudia, the XYZ goth queen, Claudia, the Claudia, the queen of the damned, whatever it is, what have you. And he was trying to explain that to him, but he wasn't being very, very receptive of that. And he essentially does some vampiric trickery, some vampiric fuckery on Daniel, to making his hand freak out and making him lose all control, essentially, of his body, and to where he's slapping the table on this hand on the table, and he can't do it uncontrollably, and it's Louis controlling his body. Now, the thing that I noticed was that to calm him down, Reid had to come over and put his hand on his shoulder. At this point, I've seen the series, I know what the deal is with him. But at this point, if you're just watching it, you're gonna think that, like, and rewatching it, you're gonna think that, like, that's weird. He employs Reid, but somehow he has some kind of intimate relationship enough with him to calm him down from a very upset or angry state at which Daniel has gotten him to. And it's nothing big. He just puts his hand on the shoulder and he's like, kind of like, hey, kind of be grounded, be relaxed right now. And that communicated everything I think that it needed to, that Rashid is just a bit more than just the help. I think he's a bit more than just the help, a bit more than the servant as he refers himself to. And the boldness that occurs after this I thought was friggin' brilliant, but also like deserved and I think appropriate reaction from Daniel's perspective, and he kept it all professional. But that was the tipping point, I think, the bubbling point for both Louis and for Daniel as well, because he comes up to him like after he's Rashid calmed him down, and he comes up to him, he slaps the shit out of him. He slapped the shit out of him for making him lose control over his body. And Daniel just looks at him and goes back to sit back down, and he informs him, is like, oh, we're still recording. That was oh man, that was something, because it showed like Daniel Malloy don't give a fuck. Malloy don't give a fuck. Malloy don't care. Like, he's a vampire or human, whatever the fuck you are, and it's like, I will be respected. And I think it is kind of fucked up because like all that entire time, I mean, it's a good clean interview. They both came in good faith to one another. I don't know, just to attack him like that just because he was making sure that he was doing his job, one, and making sure that he was aware of like realistically people are gonna take the information and they're gonna run with it. I mean, he was just telling him the realistics of it, and he attacked him. He attacked him just for telling him the truth. And Daniel responded in the only bold way he knew how, by slapping the shit out of him. And yeah, essentially. But yeah, I thought that was very... we haven't known, and if you think about it too, we haven't known the character Daniel Malloy that much. We wouldn't never necessarily find a strong connection towards him. Not really. He shared a little bit with us in terms of like, he had this ice cream dinner with his wife. I think it was on episode 2. We talked about that. But we don't really know Daniel. But at the same time, I feel like we know him a little bit more from his mannerism. I feel like, and I think, let me know if you guys agree, his character would do that. Do you know what I mean? His character, Malloy, he's so bold enough to sit there, interview a vampire, have dinner with a vampire, watch the vampire feed and all this other stuff. And I feel like he's bold enough to be like, you know what, just slap him across the face, just a little, because he's not gonna play that shit. Might be a vampire, but doesn't mean that you shouldn't be respected. You know what I mean? I thought that was great. That communicated so much. It communicated everything it needed to and more, in my opinion. So we turn back to Louis and Lestat, which Louis is obsessing over Claudia, and he is trying to find out exactly where she is. And he's reading in the paper that there's a series of murders on campus of a particular university. And he is convinced himself that, like, yes, that has to be Claudia. And he's waiting for her. They're still waiting for her to come back home, hoping that she can come back home, and essentially waiting for her to eventually make herself come back to the townhouse. And in this time, Lestat is still fucking about with Antoinette. And Antoinette sounds like a very European name that's like a very European name that has like some kind of European ties to it, or some kind of like Dracula, Castlevania kind of ties to it. Is someone told me, walked up to me and is like, yo, the Bride of Dracula is actually named Antoinette. I'd be like, word? And they'd be like, no. But I'd be like, but you thought it was, wouldn't it? And I'd be like, yeah, I did. I'd be like, yeah, I did. 110%. Yeah, let's go back to the episode. So in this episode, Louis gets to see his sister again. We really, really do get to see rare glimpses of Grace. I don't think that she'll probably play a part, because her part was kind of a little bit minor in this first season. If they come back with the same stories, a little bit of the same characters, it might even be taken from a different perspective. Like, look at the Jujutsu Kaisen. Also check out on review anime Jujutsu Kaisen guys, a review over there. But look at Jujutsu Kaisen season 2. They completely did a whole overhaul in the direction in which the story was going. They took a complete left turn and made someone else the protagonist. Either way, I wonder if she'll play a role in the season 2, just because, well, in this, she had like a more of a minor role. His sister, she didn't really have a lot of lines. There were definitely some, and there were some moments that needed to be created to actually show that transition from human to vampire. But yeah, like I don't know if we'll be seeing too much of Grace within the second season, and that I'm mad about it. The actress was actually really, really good. But I mean, more or less, I'm mad about it because I think about what it does mean for the character of Louis to actually finally lose those grounds of ties to his past life as to what he had before. Something interesting that I was thinking about, what would be cool while watching this, is that if somehow, some way that, like, because they're immortal, somehow, some way that is like, if years go on pass by, and Louis has nieces and nephews because of Grace, and one of his nieces and nephews comes and he's like a hunter or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And he comes to kill Lestat and Louis or whatever it is, and somehow they find out that, you know, they are related, and it's kind of like, oh, I can't kill you now, like that. I like those intense, complicated scenes, those situations. I think that would be a very ideal kind of cool storyline. Or one of Louis' descendants or one of Louis' families finds him, and they have to make him or turn him into a vampire, and Louis does it, and they introduce some new characters that way. That would actually be really, really cool. So it's not just the fact that Grace is gone, but I guess maybe that connection or that ability to tell that story from Louis' bloodline could potentially be gone too. So that's why I was kind of like, I don't know if, like, I mean, they could always do it, but like, I don't know, like that connection to Grace, because Grace had made a tombstone for him essentially, and I guess I'm wondering if that was supposed to be the communicating that, hey, you know, dealings with Grace is done. All his dealings with Grace is finished. That's it. Like, you're no longer my brother, and she actually says that. She's like, you're no longer my brother, but like, you're no longer a part of our family anymore. You're no longer a part of the family anymore. I can't refer to you as my brother anymore. But again, I wonder what that means, because like the twins clearly know about Louis, and saw in that episode where the twins saw him and he kicked in that door, and the twins are like, oh my god, it's a ghost, because like he never ages, but they know about him. But it's just the fact that, will they use that story or that past family line, you know, of Grace again? Because that would be really, I think they probably won't do that. They probably won't. Anyway, going back to the actual episode. Now, the next few scenes are epic. Oh my god, epic. There's no other way to describe it. I think definitely 110% one of my favorite scenes throughout the entire series. These things that bubbled up and that eventually explode in a beautiful in a beautiful, you know, what's the word? In a beautiful domestic abusive relationship that is painted in such a accurate way. I think it is art in itself, and is beautiful. It's so beautiful and so well done. So well done. I hope someone got an award for this or something. All of the actors were on point. It looked great. The production was amazing. It was just the way that it was done was so good. And the way, so let's just build the scene up for a second. Claudia comes home, right? Claudia comes home, and she is telling Lestat and Louis about how she's been researching all of these things, because Lestat isn't telling her shit. And she wants to know, she wants answers. And like, she wants to know more about herself and more about what she is realistically is all that she could really do because of the predicament that she's in. We discussed it later, earlier. But she's been telling them about how she's been doing some research on ancient gods and how certain things about the blood curse and the blood hunger essentially is something that, she's been looking into and all these things. And she wants to go ahead now and explore. And she wants to explore the world. And she wants to explore what it really means, I guess, to be a vampire and to understand what she is. Something very noble. And Lestat's kind of like, I just want to fuck. Like, I just want to fuck Louis and live a normal life. I just want to fuck Louis and Antoinette and live a normal life. That's essentially what it comes down to. But he belittles her and he looks down on her and he kind of tells her, you think that you could go out and find other vampires and go to Europe. The other vampires in Europe are way more vicious, probably realistically even worse than he is, because he's pretty bad, right? I mean, like, well, not actually at this point, he's okay, but you can see in the ways that he kind of has been manipulating Louis and how he has been kind of controlling and kind of dodging certain questions when it comes to Claudia asking particular ones. But yeah, like this whole fight of him deflecting certain things and attacking the very nature of the mistakes that Claudia has made when asked certain questions. And the mental conversation and the close-up shots, oh man, it's just so done so well. The close-up shots during this fight between the three of them, because it was like you could see and hear the panic on each of their faces, because essentially Claudia is there to take Louis away. Claudia is there is like, okay, we're in an abusive relationship. We need to leave. We need to get out. You need to get out. You don't see it because you're blinded by love. And I'm here, and Claudia basically tells him, like, look, I'm here to take you away from this. Let's go and find out what we really are. And I'm here to pick you up, Louis. And Louis looks at Claudia and he is questioning it. And you can see and hear the panic in Lestat's voice yelling at her, and he's losing his temper. Everything is bubbling up. You can tell and you can feel and see the intensity as it grows and grows and grows. And then Lestat starts to choke Claudia, and Louis saves her, and the fight starts. And dude, it is a vampiric fight if there ever was one. Like, it just the way how they shot it too. It wasn't like such hard cuts, but the cuts they did it, they made it look like they had like unbelievable strength. And I guess the environment in the background, because it's all tarnished and it's people have been reading like old newspapers, and it looks a mess in there. Essentially, like Claudia says, they need a housekeeper, but it helps add to the dramatic household abuse environment that is realistically something that happens within, like, a household. The household that they fight in isn't going to be some big, nice looking mansion. The household that they fight in is going to look like it's going to look like shithole. It's going to look like a shithole because the relationship is broken. So the house is broken. There's nothing that's actually operating and working in the house, like the cleaning, like the maintenance, or whatever it is. So they make it look like that. The actual production side of that is amazing. Is amazing. You cannot deny if you've seen the series that this is probably one of the hypest, greatest moments within the entire series, and solidifies what it means to be a vampire within this fight as well. something of note we gotta say about this within this episode is that when she looked in that mirror, dude, when she looked in that mirror, it kind of told a lot of things. You could see the blood that's draining down her face that's saying that she's not invulnerable. These vampires, they're beings. They have emotions. They may be very strong, but they have emotion. They have fear. They have anger. They have sadness. They have sorrow, but they also bleed, like humans. And she could see this in the mirror. So again, analyzing that comparison of the vampire versus the human, it essentially breaks it down into those blurred lines once again, when you could see Claudia's reflection in the mirror. Because if you guys don't know, certain rules in vampirism, that was like one of Bram's first rules. If you ever read Bram Stoker's book with Dracula, that was one of the first rules. You can't see reflections of vampires. And they've been throughout history, vampires have been used. That's one of the rules of anything that have been solidified, that vampires aren't supposed to be able to be seen within reflections. And the fact that you could see it here says that, hey, again, maybe she's not so different from what she was before. It's these little subtleties that speak to this. This fight, it says so much, but by not saying so much. And while she notices this, boom, Lestat and Louis come crashing in. They come crashing from the wall that's next door from when they're fighting. And they're still wailing on one another. But I think for the most part, it looks like Lestat has the upper hand over Louis. And realistically, I mean, why wouldn't he? He's older, he's stronger. Louis doesn't drink vampire. I mean, I'm not just going from basic vampire lore and rules from what we've seen on TV, right? Look at the Vampire Diaries. If we look at Stefan versus Damon couldn't beat Stefan for a number of years because he didn't drink from humans. He drank from a lot of animals and drank a lot of animal blood. Similar thing here. Lestat is dominating over Louis because realistically he probably most likely isn't strong enough to defeat him because he's been gorging himself on animal blood rather than human blood. And then another thing is too that he's older. He's been at this a way longer time than that of Louis. He's been at them, so he has more abilities. He's probably used to, if anything, realistically, he's probably used to fighting other vampires. And by the end of this, he has gotten to the point where he is dragging Louis by his skull, by the base, the upper part, the lower part of his skull, there, his chin, and he's dragging him through the streets outside of the mansion that they have, and he's marching along, and he's dragging him with the blood running through the hallway that leads out into the street. And again, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but something that was very interesting within this entire sequence was that where the speech of where essentially where Claudia says, "Uncle Les, it's me that you want. It's my fault. Please don't hurt him. He ain't done nothing." And this entire sequence that happens between them, they have the vampire face on. They have the vampire face on where you could see their eyes are clearly more dilated in the dark shadows a little bit. And everybody has fangs, except for Louis, because his face is so swollen. It's so beaten in. It's so damaged because of the domestic abuser, that you can't see his face. We can't see his eyes. He's got a bunch of lumps and swollen and swells on his face. It's that intense But Claudia has the vampire eyes and the vampire teeth, even though she didn't need to. And Lestat had the vampire eyes and teeth. It basically shows the demonic nature of what they are. They might be these, creatures that are these demonic, wicked creatures that they are, but they're also, in a very realistic, like domestic, abusive situation that's actually happening. That could have easily happened to their former human selves as well. So Lestat, like Superman, flies again. You guys know how I feel about this flying vampire shit. Flies up and flies all the way up as he's biting and draining Louis, and Louis is just panicking as he flies all the way up to, I guess, like maybe almost the stratosphere of the Earth, and it's sad. It's sad because after all this abuse, after all this beating, after all this fighting out of love, right? After all of this, what happened? He's trying to convince Louis to say, like, Lestat, I'll never love you. Because he's so convinced and he's so scared that Louis would leave him. He's afraid. He's so afraid that Louis would just leave him so he would be alone. And so that loneliness has brought him to this, where he's beaten his lover to within an inch of his life, and he is now dangling him up in the air. And Louis just responds, "Let me go." And Lestat lets him go, and he falls. Guys, it's got to be at least 100 stories or more, realistically. Like, you could, it looks like it was like he was dropped from like a plane onto the building of the mansion of where they're staying at. And wow. And the way how they shot it too, it made it look so real as to like, this is how it will look like when you're falling from this building. Because we've all seen like people jumping out of planes and stuff, and like how the ground looks so flat and like, anyway, so it drops and he falls, and Lestat again landing like fucking Superman. Not Superman, he's a vampire, whatever. Landing like Superman, just kind of looks at him, and Claudia looks at Lestat like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know what I mean? And again, I've never been there. I've never been in an abusive relationship. I've never been there, but we know what it looks like. Do you know what I mean? I'm from the outside, and they painted that beautifully. They painted that gorgeously. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what your opinion on it was, but that was painted beautifully. It was done really well. Yeah, just something great. Episodes run a little bit long, so we're just gonna jump straight into, but that's the end of the episode. And we're just gonna jump straight into Ash's favorite scenes. And guys, from what I just described it, you guys probably already know what one of them are. But one of them are. But before that, Ash's favorite scene, one of Ash's favorite scenes, definitely, I think, the entry, number one, is the entry of the new vampire. We got to get a little bit of context, and this is the first time of us seeing something outside of the realms of Louis, Lestat, and Claudia. We got to see Bruce. We got to meet Bruce. We get to meet Bruce the vampire, and we understand like a lot of the vampiric nature of a lot of our main characters that we've seen. This side character, or temporary character, also has a little bit of a darker tone. And we didn't talk about that much because we switched off the different scene, but like it was implied that he was having this intense relationship, this abusive relationship with Claudia, and to an extent he actually raped her as well. That's how it was essentially implied. I think we're probably going to talk a little bit more about that, what happened exactly with Bruce in the next episode. I'm not too sure. But the fact that we got to meet another vampire, I think, was definitely sincerely iconic within this episode. Definitely one of my favorite scenes. Second favorite scene is drunk Claudia and her running from the police and trying to cover up all of her murders while trying to cover up her murders while evading the cops and while being drunk off of her ass. Just that whole, again, domestic hijinks of trying to avoid certain things and tricking the police officer into thinking that she's dressed, she's getting dressed while covering up all of her missing body parts, all of her trophies, essentially, from her kills. And lastly, of course, guys, we know my favorite scene was that fight, that vampire fight. Amazing. Really, really good. Really, really well choreographed. Impactful fight. The sound effects, the production, the subtext behind the fight with the eyes and the teeth. Well, when he was being stolen away, good. Just a really, really good episode. And with that, Linda, let's get the OnReviewCast score if we can.
On review, Interview with a Vampire episode 5 receives a 5 out of 5.
Guys, that's definitely gonna do it for me. Thanks for listening so much. We really do appreciate it. I know this one went a little bit long, but like I said, thank you again. And if you have any thoughts and opinions about this episode, please show your support and interact with us on all of our socials, the Facebook, the Instagram, and the Twitter. And guys, lastly, be safe, be kind, be you. Take care.